It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to see some new faces and some familiar faces. I don't want to say old, but familiar faces is there. But just before we start, I just want to remind, as we share this conversation, it's not just for you, it is for me as well. So, in the hand of Spirit, that's how life is. I would like to start by saying, I hope everybody has a paper bill in their wallets and pocket. I want you to just grab one, just pull one out of your pocket. And there is something, just, and if you don't, just grab a piece of paper. That's about it. But the idea was, I want you to just crush it as best possible. Just squish it, smush it, and you go for it. And just that's a part of just a little shifting of the mind, so to speak. So just go at it. You know, you can jump on it, but it's a church service, so that's fine. But the part is that you hold on to it. I just wanted you to understand that could represent life in the most simplest form. Even if you want to tear it, whoever is strong, brave enough, you can tear it up. But still, what the point is, as I pulled in parking, all of this, just we're going to start with that, and I always trust and be led by whatever Spirit is leading. But the part that I want you to all recognize, you're holding something, maybe a little symbolic view of your own life. Many creases and folds, many places squished, not in the best way form, but it still has a value. So no matter how the age and number progresses, all that life has thrown at us is given us a certain value. And not to discard any crease, any fold, or anything over and above the other, or less than anything else. Everything adds up to define a sense of value. And I just have to get you to pull out a bill, because to make it tangible, to say you're holding that in your hand still. So the value of you is always with you. And the more I'm working with the sense of the spiritualist realm, or the understanding of afterlife, that value of shared memory of a loved one is remarkable. No matter where we go, as long as our cognitive function is in order, we are living and inspired by memories of the past, creating the fleeting memories of this moment to continue to work on whatever we are leaving on to. So it's not that it's your own value, but what the value you're going to leave behind. And once again, it's really not about the denomination that you pulled out of your wallets, it's just understanding each and every one of us have a value. And we get to work through that value in the terms of finances. What you invest, or what you invest into, is something is given to you in return. And I don't have to give any sense of definition to what that means, but it's very simple as said. Right? And the part is, the more we, as some practitioners, are working with an aspect of the afterlife, the more strong we grow in our own unique understanding. And no matter how many of us are, there are only certain things are common, everything else is unique to the individual that is putting that practice into. So your journey of your life is different than mine, and that's how it goes. But also at the sense of the bottom of it is, it's about the value. Now, here's the thing. I can value whatever it is, but the perception that we receive from others of our perceived value to them is just an arbitrary thing. How many times you have found that you did the best you could, but that the best you could was not the best for the other person? So there's always that little mismatch that is always happening. And if you could see it as something gently abrasive, maybe it is to allow us to understand our own value. Just like this says, if we don't recognize our own value, perhaps the one that we are working with may not perceive that value within ourselves. So it's an exchange, because at the same time, the exchange they are giving us is also the value that adds to us. And our perception of them goes both ways. You know, it's not just one-way thing is there. So, you know, we read our principles, do unto others as others will have do unto you. That's the golden rule. I think it's, no matter what faith you go in, that golden rule is such a primary golden rule. It is always existing. So that part of that understanding is taking me to the yesterday's experience. I had a day of work. I did my work to the best of abilities, but at the same time, I needed my own time. So I, you know, grabbed my closest camera that was laying next to me, and I jumped in the car. I went to New Smyrna Beach. As I came upon the bridge, I realized I'm not going to get to the beach right at the time for sunset. They were having some sort of Christmas parade. Something was going on all the way from Peninsula Drive all the way to 3-4 blocks were all blocked off, always. And I'm not making, even though I know all the roads by this time going to the beach, I kind of in my head was committed. But then I said, you know, it is what it is. I get what I get, and that's about the peace I had to make with my own self. So I was going for my own sense of healing. So I pulled into this parking space, and I walked to the beach, and I was walking. Just flocks of people from different angles were merging into one spot. And I'm like, this is interesting. It's absolutely interesting. Somebody opened a little cardboard box, pulled out a gas cylinder out of it, and I'm like, oh, is it a reveal, gender reveal, baby, whatever's going on? But I took it in my solar plexus, I like curiosity, play. I said, no, this is celebration of life. So even before they took out their balloons and all the things, it just felt like it's a celebration of life. So I just hung around the closest post there was. I just leaned on there, the camera was ready. I was just like, you know, let me just capture these moments. But at the same time, as I saw that, I became a part of that experience. I had no clue who they were. I do not know what the reason, cause, person perhaps was, but I could just feel energetically getting pulled into that emotion of the grief or remembrance, or just not understanding how to even emote in the group setting. Some people were emotional, some people were just present, and it was just a beautiful thing to see how we were just all experiencing. I was just right there, and I couldn't feel, but the tears come into my eyes just because I could feel the pain of some of these people, including the one that we were celebrating. So I just stood there. That was the extent of my photography, and then the part for me was, if the traffic was clear, I would have ended at a different spot on the beach. I would have missed this experience for myself. Now, it added value to me to just saying, you know, my sensitivity still has that openness to embrace all the emotions that are given to me at any circumstance. Now, was I being a medium, or was I wanting to say, now that's where I had to learn to discern. This is not my place to go and dig into the detail of what's going on. Just alone knowing this is a celebration of life was enough. And they were taking the ashes to the ocean, and they were doing their own hugs and goodbyes to each other, and it was just enjoyable. I did get a picture of all the balloons rising to the sky. I have that on my camera, and it just was a moment that is relevant for me. But as I shared the story, each and everybody, I could say, there was such a big variation in the tapestry of the people that were gathered. And even you can understand their own emotions to that person that they were celebrating were coming from different shapes, sizes, and forms. But everybody came there with a value of appreciating that life that they knew at some point. Right? But there was other parts of that. It was enjoyable was some living members of that group were supporting each other in that celebration of life. Somebody was watching kids, there were little kids there. Some people were watching the parents, I believe, that I'm just projecting they were parents, because just the way things were gravitating were just evident of how everybody was supporting. But the value, I feel, for me was just an understanding. I added something to my experience, and I didn't want it to go anywhere. There were other activities. I was just fine being in that space. And I could feel an exchange of the energy was just simply happening between me and the group of the energy of the group. But also at the same time, we were all sensitives at all times. Some are cognitively working with that ability, some are just being intuitive, some are just like they have no clue. But that energy is still operational at all times, right? But the part of that is, how do we offer a sense of self that starts to create a value in that understanding of that is there. So, like it says, it's a skill set, it's a muscle. The longer, the faster, the deeper you will work with it, the stronger, the better and finer it's going to become. Same thing goes with any aspect or practice of spirituality or yoga, athletics, anything you would call it. The more we work with it, the more familiar it becomes, the more it enriches our lives, the more valuable we become. So shifting the value is internal. It's never an external thing. So if you're expecting me to add value to you, not so much. At the same time, if you're adding value to me, not so much. However, the experience that we receive from each other, that leaves an imprint for me to either value it or devalue it. You see the point? And the part of that is how we then respond to it adds value. So by being present with somebody that is grieving or having even a great time, sometimes holding that space has a value of its own. Just keeping somebody in the light, keeping somebody in the love that they may not be receiving where they are. But also at the same time, the perception of the psychology is that we're adding value to each other. Right? And we've seen this in our congregation of attendance. Sometimes the house is full, sometimes the house is just minimally there. But still, the act of being in service has a value of its own, regardless of where the receptivity is. And that's the part, is we get so enticed in, are we being recognized? Are we doing this? Are we received in one way, shape, or form? But at the same time, that is sort of jeopardizing our own ability to value ourselves. So, that being said, if the heart is in the right place, the value is pretty potent. If your mind is in the right place, the value is pretty potent. And what I'm wanting to leave to you is this is the first week of December. Time's going to just zip by, and pretty soon we'll be looking in January already. We'll be sitting in January. But also at the same time, this is also the time where families come together, friends come together, parties happen, gatherings happen, appreciating each other happen. And that is also the places how we're going to value ourselves within the participation of all that will go on. And I'm slowly removed myself from the semantics of materialistic celebration, so my exchange of gifts is very minimal. But also at the same time, many years ago I realized this is something I would not want to align myself. I appreciate receiving and giving, but to that overextension of that is something where I feel like I was finding a little not well within myself. So I chose to slightly, gently remove myself. I did not go cold turkey, but I gently, progressively become very minimalistic with that, and I'm okay with that. Now here's another part of the thing, is those that are doing this life in a singular solo fashion, every day is Christmas, because whatever you want, you can get it. You're not waiting for somebody to gift it to you or somebody. So that constant appreciation is also something, what I would say, adds value to our own self. And the part of that is not as an enticement, but the appreciation is I deserve it. I have something that I want, and I have the ability to get what I want. And I think that's a value in its own self. Is there? I will tell you another fun factor of the realization. My first vehicle in the United States costed me $3,200. And I'm pretty clear, I know how, so it went from $3,200 to $11,000, $11,000 to $25,000 plus, and just 2 weeks ago, it kind of progressively went up. So I have something more, and a part of that is, there was a fear, am I making the right decision? Is it going to take me what I need to do? How it's going to shift things? But at the same time, it was not gratifying myself. But all at the same time is, I do drive a lot, and instead of flying, I try to drive as far as I can. So there's a value of exchange there. And I recognize that value in some form. But also at the same time, the progressiveness of our increased value reveals over time. It is not in that moment is there. Perhaps the next moment is even greater. So however you value yourself today in this very moment, beautiful, fantastic. And if you have an awareness of that, even greater. But tomorrow, it could be even better. But also at the same time, the laws of oppositions are always existing. So you could be not so great, but we will not focus there because we will look for the other side of polarity. So thinking in terms of, we are constantly adding value to us. And we are not realizing it's happening constantly at all given times. But at the same time, life is very fleeting. It's going to run away. Now, as a spiritualist platform, the natural laws are galore to go about all that we've talked about, manifestation, abundance, attraction, and everything. But I heard this quote a long time ago, if you're not good at receiving, you cannot be good at giving. However, on the contrary, it says if you're not good at giving, you're not good at receiving. That's how I've learned all through my life. If I cannot give, I may not receive. And slowly I'm learning, if I'm not good at receiving, I may not be able to give. So there's a little shifting of the mind is there. Now it's a perceived value. Once again, it's a perceived value, what I feel, what I'm receiving. But at the same time, I'm learning when somebody's offering me something, a good word, a compliment, an appreciation, or even recognition of me being just present in that process. And I'm recognizing not to dismiss it or in my old-fashioned ways like, I'm here because I can. I've learned to just simply say thank you for observing that, or thank you for your work. So I'm just changing within myself. So once again, as I leave here, these words of the exchange of the values are going to come in handy as soon as I walk out of these doors. But we are living life constantly. Are you good at receiving? It's once again, it's an open term. Is receiving goodness or receiving not so good things? Finding value in still everything. There was another funny quote that I've come upon 2 months ago, and I think this is relevant to say. We think life is made up of all this, but life is made up of memories. We think we are bone and flesh, but we are made up of memories and stories. Because we can have all this if we don't have stories to go along with it. Think about that. But for that person that is sitting under a tree, completely trusting in the God's ability to provide food, clothing, shelter, and the basic necessity while they're enjoying the oneness with God, that value is for them in that belief system. Once again, is it right or wrong? It's not for me to say. It's just theirs to fulfill, theirs to accomplish, and theirs to receive. And if their power of manifestation is so potent, they will get what they want. But also at the same time, in the memory of others, that man sat underneath that tree, did his connection with God, and everything was provided. That's all the memory he's going to leave. But still, he still becomes something made up of memories and experiences in that part. I have numerous stories going back in India where people were just very completely vested in God's principle. They would not leave their space. Everything was met in their life. But also at the same time, they had their own understanding of value. They took value in everything they received. And it kept them sustained in their own energy and elevated them to wherever they needed to be. But what about you? This is also the few weeks to ask, what about me? In the last, let's say 48 weeks, 52 weeks, all that I've received as an experience, doesn't matter what kind, what side of the balancing scale it fits in, did I perceive, receive, take the value that it offered me? Right? So any negative experiences, if you think they were just there to rub you the wrong way, there's value in that too. And I think I'm once again embracing it more and more to say, what did I need to learn from this? Did I miss something? I cannot be 100% impeccable at all times, but what am I taking away from this? What is adding to my own value of understanding? And the idea is to maybe not repeat it again. And I do have that little strive in me to not repeat mistakes more than 2-3 times. If it's third time, then I probably will not repeat that any time again. But the thing is, what value am I taking in my life experiences? Right? So, who enjoys flea markets here? I think we all do. If somebody doesn't, something's to be checked out. You need to find value in the flea market experience. So in Lake Helen, we have flea market, and this once again comes from my experience yesterday, walking through the flea market, and I know something is there, and usually it works for me this way. If something pulls me in, I know it's going to find me. So I took 2 rounds. I stopped at every person that had set up anything. I just browsed, like, what is in here? What is in here? I came up with this guy set up on his back of his truck. He's got tables, he's got little toy cars, the Matchbox cars. And he's got Ziploc bags, $2 a bag or whatever it was in there. Some were separated with boats, some were separated with fire trucks. It was just fun, having a blast, just looking at little things and going back of the time where I only had 2 growing up. But here it was, the whole thing. And we were wheeling and dealing. He was wanting me to walk away with everything that he had. So he was just throwing things at me to make a good value in the sense. And here I am, like something over here says, look. And I looked, and there was a little guitar sitting over there. It has strings, everything looked fine. There are some blemishes on that. I have no idea how to play a guitar. But the guitar was looking at me, and I was looking at the guitar. I'm like, oh, there it is. So that was my value. That magnet found what I was looking for, or what that thing was looking for. So I touched it, the strings looked fine, the neck was not warped, basic stuff. I said, I'll come back. And that's usually my measuring stick. If you leave it alone, you take 2 circles. If it's still there, then you think about it. That's deflecting of making an impulsive buy. So I just did another round, nothing else, called my name, came back. He was still trying to sell me the toy cars. So he was saying, you take the guitar, I'll give you this toy car. So we were going back and forth. I don't need those cars, I just enjoy it because they are there. So we were just going back and forth, and then we settled. I offered him a price, and he couldn't turn it down. And I knew it was a fair bargain for mine. So I brought a guitar home. I do not know what I'm going to do with it, but it's cleaned, I dusted it, I wiped it nicely. It's sitting by the window. I played the strings, it's fine, the bridge is fine. So, music teachers, I'm just saying, the part of that experience is so fun. If we just allow our naturalness to lead us to where we need to be, the struggle becomes minimal. The friction of choice becomes minimal. And that's what I would want to say, If we're following the compass that your soul or the God space has set up for you, then why put up a fight with it? It will lead you to a place that it's well positioned for you. So, the other thing about the guitar was it says Fender on it. I do not know which brand is good or not, but the Fender sounded really good. So, I said, made the deal. $40 later, the guitar. It has a serial number on it, it has everything is in place. But a part of that is, I found value in that exchange of just an amusement, something to reflect upon for the next few days, like, oh. And the bargaining people would know, oh, could I squeeze $5 more? But I didn't do that, but a part of that is the value of exchange, the whole experience was there. But still, I wish I could have brought 1 toy car. But that was not the point. It was not speaking my name, so I just left it alone. And I think that's what I'm learning. But even looking at that man's exchange of the energy with me, he was trying to do what was right for him, and he was just trying to hold his space, not trying to push me over. I didn't try to lean onto him too far. But a part of that exchange was just happening. It happened naturally, and that was the end of it. But also at the same time, his words were, I'm giving you this prize if it is for you and you're going to learn. Even if it's 1 string, 1 note. He said, I will make that. Part of that is trust, is he gave it to me. He could have made up a story to get a good prize out of him. But somewhere he could palpate that sincerity in me. And I was able to offer him, like, this is for me. I'm not going to make money on it, but don't have that. But I think that trust, that sincerity is usually very obvious. And if it is not there, then it is obvious too. And I speak to you about this because spiritualism is no different than living this life. And that's the part of the philosophy of spiritualism is, are you doing that self-inquiry within you, how life is unfolding inside of you? And if you're not paying attention to it, perhaps you're missing the point altogether. But the spiritualism is preparing us now for something that will be remembered about us in memories through those that will talk about us when we are not here. So that value is a very potent term. So those that have crushed up their monies can uncrush it because it still holds the value. It hasn't changed a bit in the last 20, 25 minutes. So that's your life. Your life will always have a value, the value that you give it rather than somebody else places on it. Please remember that. Thank you.